what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, June 27th, 2017, almost to the end of the month here, a week away from Independence Day. We'll be talking about that later in the week and probably on Monday as well. And quick program note, as of right now, RBN will be broadcasting live on the 4th of July, Independence Day, with whatever's going on. And there's a lot of stuff going on out there. If you were watching corporate media, you would probably think the most important story happening right now is the delay to the health care vote. The GOP cannot get enough people to support it, so the vote is being put off. The real breaking story, though, is much more alarming than that. And let me preface this by going back yesterday to the story that Seymour Hersh put on out, saying that intelligence agencies, the military on the ground, knew there was no chemical weapons attack at Idlib. There was a strike on an ammo dump, a legitimate military target. There was a little collateral damage, but there was no deliberate chemical weapon attack on the Syrian people by Bashar al-Assad. And it's amazing, given Seymour Hersh's reputation and his Pulitzer Prize, the corporate media just turned on him. Oh, he's a crank, he's a kook, he's the source of the fake news out there. And today we're finding out why they turned on him with such venom, because the White House has come on out. Sean Spicer came on out basically saying that the White House has evidence that Bashar al-Assad is making preparations to launch more chemical weapons attacks against his own people. So Trump is doubling down on this nonsense. And Nikki Haley is up there at the United Nations saying, we're going to get Assad if he dares use chemical weapons on his people. Which tells you right there, why would Assad do that? He's winning the war. Okay, he's winning the war. Why would he do the one thing that would justify the U.S. coming on in and just declaring unrestricted war on Assad's government? And the answer, of course, is Assad isn't that stupid. This is another hoax. Saddam's nuclear weapons. Torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin. Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. On and on and on. How many more times do you have to be lied to until you're willing to stand up to the government and say, you're a bunch of liars? You are full of bovine excrement, and I'm not listening to you anymore. So Haley's up there at the United Nations, and she's extending the threat to Russia and Iran. In other words, the news story is coming on out that if Assad dares to gas his people again, we're going to hold Russia and Iran responsible because they're enabling Assad. And, of course, nobody's buying this. And frankly, as an American citizen, you ought to be feeling very insulted that they actually thought you were going to buy this. And over on Twitter, the Twitterverse is tearing Nikki Haley a new one, which she richly deserves. Now, here's where the story gets even murkier. Okay, we're seeing this story that came out of Oraz.com. U.S. defense officials have no idea where any of this came from, where this White House statement on possible Syrian chemical attack, where it came from. And the reason that is significant is because normally these kind of statements about potential military action and a response to an act of aggression or whatever are coordinated with the intelligence agencies and the Defense Department so that nobody is caught by surprise when a reporter asks a question. And in this case, it didn't happen. This is just coming out of the White House. And as Seymour Hersh revealed about Idlib, nobody else has any idea about any of this stuff. And remember, Syria did surrender all of their chemical weapons under UN inspection in a deal brokered by Vladimir Putin. So this is another big steaming pile of war-justifying bovine excrement here. Britain's already hopped on board. Their defense secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, is already out there saying, if Assad dares gas his people again, Great Britain will join the coalition and we'll go back into Syria and drop all kinds of bombs. Well, what they're telegraphing is there's going to be a false flag attack. Because Assad is not stupid. He's not going to do the one thing that is going to reverse the situation. And I'm seeing articles all over the place This one is in Sputnik News, saying the U.S. is getting ready to attack Syria amid this chemical weapons claim. Nobody's buying this. Damascus is saying, no, we don't have chemical weapons. We're not using chemical weapons. This is just completely made up out of fairy dust and whatever antidepressants they're taking there in the White House to try and reverse the U.S. fortunes in the war in Syria, because if the U.S.-backed terrorists get kicked out of Syria, it's going to be seen as the first major military defeat for the United States since Vietnam. And so you should be insulted. Somebody in the White House actually thinks you're going to buy this. Oh, yes, Assad is going to gas his people again. Of course, Assad is not going to gas his people again. He didn't gas them in the first place. He's winning the war. He's kicking the U.S.-backed terrorists out of his country. Why would he do the one thing that would allow the United States to say, well, we have a right to go on in there, and we're going to blame Russia and Iran along with Syria, and the war will truly be on? Assad is many things. He's not stupid. They've been replaying this lie about Assad is gassing his own people, Assad is gassing his own people, Assad is for year after year after year, and it's never proven, and in some cases directly contradicted by the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors. Remember when they claimed Assad had gassed his own Alawite supporters right in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors on the very day they arrived? And ultimately the UN chemical weapons said, no, it's the rebels. They're carrying out these attacks to frame on Bashar al-Assad. We're going to do a quick little shout out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. And for those of you tuning in late, we're talking about this announcement from the White House, which apparently has no support or coordination with the Defense Department and the intelligence agencies, that they're convinced Assad is going to gas more of his own people, and therefore they're going to blame Assad and Russia and Iran. And it is insulting that they think anybody is going to believe this. Or maybe they just don't care anymore. This is our official story. We're going to war over the official story. And what are you going to do? Storm Capitol Hill with torches and pitchforks? All right, I'm going to take a phone call here. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, a little off topic, Mike, but I just want to ask you something about, I just saw in the news yesterday that Google got a $3 billion fine. And I wonder if this is a pattern we're going to see where states that are financially strapped and having a problem with their pension plans, that they're going to be trolling industries and trying to look for fine money. I'm just wondering if that's what's going on here.
Well, certainly that's a possibility. We know that in the abuses of civil forfeiture in our own country, police departments literally have people on staff who are looking for forfeiture opportunities. You know, they're not going to go after something where, you know, some little shack in the backwoods. They're going after mansions. And there was a terrible tragedy out in California some years ago where there was this huge seaside home in Malibu that was worth millions of dollars. And the cops said, boy, if we can find just one marijuana plant on the property, we can take that house. And $5 million, boy, would that help our budget. And so they raided the place. The homeowner had no idea what was going on, tried to defend his house, was shot and killed. And ultimately, they did not, in fact, find any marijuana growing on the property. So that sort of thing does go on. In the case of Google, however, it looks like Google was sort of cheating by rigging their search results to favor their own comparison shopping website over the competition. And that was what they were fined for. So it looks more like Google was misbehaving. And we know Google misbehaves all the time. Rather than the country fining them just to try and, bolster their own budget.
So where would that $3 billion go right now? When they pay the fine out, where would that go?
Well, it goes into the treasury of the country. So, yes, they're going to benefit from it. There might be some partial restitution to the original claimants as well.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, Steve, here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now then, a spokesman for the Kremlin is saying that Putin and Trump will meet in Hamburg, Germany at the G20, and we're already getting indications that members of Trump's administration are already trying to poison that well. They're trying to convince Donald Trump that Putin is evil incarnate before they even have a chance to meet. Because they're scared. Trump might actually decide he likes the guy. He was certainly talking like that last year during the campaign. And so they're trying to basically make sure that Trump is going to go in there just absolutely hating Vladimir Putin and not willing to listen to anything he has to say. And again, they're just pushing this war agenda forward. Now, let's talk about the corporate media. As you know, CNN had a major whoopsie lately where they put out this story claiming that an ally of Donald Trump was connected to this Russian bank, and as it turned out, the story was completely bogus. CNN had to take it off their site. They had to officially, formally retract it. It's another blow against their credibility. And apparently 3 CNN employees have now resigned over this story, and or they were asked to resign. And it's not. CNN is manufacturing an alternate world that they hope you will believe in. And over at Project Veritas, they have scored again because they got CNN producer John Bonifield on a hidden camera admitting the whole Russia story against President Trump it's a fantasy. It's nonsense. And they say they're pushing the story because most of their viewers are liberals. They want to see Donald Trump go down in flames. And so they're tuning in to CNN to get their little fantasies fed that Trump is going to come down and Trump is going to come down. And it's a ratings grab by CNN CEO Jeff Zucker. And if always interested in the ratings, I mean, start emulating the Daily Mail. You know, have the stories about beautiful girls' wardrobe failures with videos if you want to improve CNN's ratings, because you're not going to get them up there pandering to the liberals, because eventually even the liberals are going to realize there's no news in CNN. It's all fairy tales, wishful thinking here. And despite the Project Veritas video, and despite the embarrassment over the story that had to be retracted, Jeff Zucker is out there saying viewers trust CNN more than ever. Boy, talk about a whopper. It's just amazing how arrogant they are over in the corporate media. And of course, Donald Trump has responded to the retraction of this story by saying, let's look at the other phony stories they do. And CNN may be going through a management shakeup because they really screwed this up. They really messed it up. It's one thing to lie to the public and people think, I think it may be a lie. But it's quite another to go out there with a totally fantastic story and you have to take it back and everybody's watching while you do it. And Trump has a point here. It's time to look at all the fake stories coming out of that corporate media. I love this headline. This is over 12160.info. CNN credibility collapses under the weight of the fake news scandal. I didn't know they had any credibility left, but apparently whatever they had is pretty much gone. So, meanwhile, over at NBC, Megyn Kelly is trying to put on a brave face in her public appearances, that everything is all hunky-dory with her show, even though her show has hit a new season low of just 3.4 million viewers. I think people just got tired of listening to her. You know, good looks only get you so far when you're supposed to be a news person. And apparently there's yet another scandal over there, because apparently Megyn Kelly had one of the Sandy Hook fathers a quote, and he came on out with this heartthrob story about the death of his child. I'm not going to go into the details, except that what he said on air directly contradicts the official story of Sandy Hook, which we know is a fantasy anyway, but Megyn Kelly failed to fact-check it. So this Sandy Hook father is out there with a completely different rendition of his experience than what's in the official story. And that right there strikes at the credibility not just of Megyn Kelly and NBC, but of that official story of Sandy Hook. Now, Benjamin Wittes, he's over at the Brookings Institution, and he was out there on Twitter to claim that there was going to be another bombshell story regarding Donald Trump and colluding with the Russians and blah, 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 blah. And, of course, it hasn't happened. There hasn't been any bombshell. So he's out there now on Twitter trying to explain why it didn't arrive. Well, it's going to be delayed, and the ink isn't dry on the forged documents or whatever his excuse is this week here. Now then, we talked about this a little bit before, but apparently somebody did a study, and they discovered back in the 2008 election, there were 5.7 million non-citizens who voted. Huge, huge block. They've now gone in looking more and more at those votes and realized they were all pretty much for the Democratic candidate, Barack Obama. And if you look at the narrow margin by which he won, it looks like Obama cheated his way to the Oval Office the way Hillary Clinton was going to do. We need an honest, verifiable, unriggable election system in this country, or we're never going to regain control. Meanwhile, apparently Andrew Spiles has actually gone to jail for 100 days for faking voter registration cards for Hillary Clinton. Now, do you remember the Clinton Foundation? How could we forget? Huge amounts of money pouring in there. Lots of favors going on out. And now, of course, the Clinton Foundation is fading into history, along, hopefully, with Hillary Clinton, whose post-election numbers continue to go down, which is breaking the normal practice. After an election, the losers' approval ratings tend to go back up, not in this case. Apparently, a lot of the people who were donating to the Clinton Foundation are now flocking to the McCain Institute over at the University of Arizona. Now, these people who were donating to the Clinton Foundation did so in the expectation of getting something in return. Access to certain people, favors, help getting the Uranium One deal. And so we have to wonder what's going on over at the McCain Institute. It looks like it's basically just taken over where Hillary Clinton left off. So, more corruption. It does seem to be endless here. Now then, turning to the streets of America, as you know, Antifa is out there trying to cause so much trouble. And apparently, according to this story over at shtfplan.com, they were at a pro-Trump free speech rally, and apparently they were throwing feces and urine into the crowd. Real class act. Real class act. And, of course, the police came on in and started arresting them. For some reason, the ACLU was out there with this idea that throwing feces and urine is a form of free speech, and no, it isn't. The First Amendment makes a point of saying that we have a right to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress of our grievances. Free speech ends when violence begins. And that is pretty much a hard and fast rule. And apparently on July 1st, this weekend, Antifa are planning to desecrate graves at the Gettysburg National Battlefield, and they're going to burn Confederate flags. And look, if you want to buy a flag and you want to burn it, that's fine. But you really ought to leave the national monuments alone. I don't know what these people think they're going to accomplish with this behavior. They're certainly not winning popular support with these kind of antics. Nobody ever really does. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, as you know, there's some investigations going on of Hillary, Loretta Lynch, and Bernie Sanders. And the Bernie Sanders investigation apparently centers around his wife's college that she was running in Vermont, and it's now gone bankrupt. And some issues are coming on up that are probably not going to look very good to the voters when Bernie is up for re-election next year. Apparently, Bernie Sanders' daughter got paid $500,000 to teach woodworking at that college. That's a pretty good salary. I've worked in teaching before. That's way, way above what teachers normally get. So, good old Bernie. All righty. Apparently, down in Brazil, President Temer is now officially charged with corruption. And I think we'd probably save a lot of time if we just keep a list of the politicians who are not corrupt. In fact, I think we could probably fit that on a Post-it note. Now, Russia's foreign minister, getting back to the situation in Syria, Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, is out there saying the U.S.-led coalition must stop this very dangerous game of sparing al-Nusra in Syria. And he's treading very, very lightly because the reality is the United States has been protecting al-Nusra. And again, for all the talk about the war on terror and the terrorists are bad and ISIS is bad and al-Qaeda is bad, we're now coming to understand the United States created these groups. They created them to use as proxies to destabilize the Middle East and make it vulnerable to outside intervention, or at least justify a U.S. intervention. Oh, we have to come into your country. You've got ISIS all over the place. There's ISIS in Syria. There's ISIS in Iraq. There's ISIS down in the Philippines now. That's the new game. And Lavrov went on to say that there is new evidence that has emerged in the last few days indicating the U.S.-led international forces continue to, quote, take the heat off, end quote, the former al-Qaeda offshoot. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Now, getting over to Qatar, a lot of things going there. Bahrain is now blaming Qatar for the military tensions of the Persian Gulf crisis. They're all just hopping on board this situation, even though Saudi Arabia made the first move. And supposedly Saudi Arabia was responding to a story in a Qatari website, news website, which turned out to be a hack job anyway. Somebody got in, put up this bogus story. Saudi Arabia says, oh, we're off and running. So again, it's a war, it's tension created out of nothingness. And the area is turning into a major flashpoint. And this thing could turn into a regional war. It could spin out of control. The Saudis are continuing to demand that Turkey pull their troops out of Qatar. And Erdogan says, no way. We're keeping our troops there in Qatar. Now, you need to understand that Iran is siding with Qatar, and Turkey, surprisingly, this surprised everybody, Turkey is siding with Qatar. And so if the rest of these Middle Eastern nations go after Qatar, it's not just going to be the one nation. They're going to be facing at least three, possibly even more. Now then, Senator Bob Corker, is saying that at this point, there should be no more arms sales to the Middle East until this Qatar crisis is over. And he's basically implying that Donald Trump's massive sale of weapons to Saudi Arabia emboldened them to start throwing their weight around the region, along, of course, with the new King Salman, who appears to be another regional U.S. puppet. And I agree with Corker. And, of course, I'm sure he's already getting phone calls from his donors who work in the military-industrial complex saying, come on, what do you think we gin up these problems for? It's to sell bullets and bombs and bandages. We'll be right back.
Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus magfull clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we get back to the war zones here, apparently James O'Keefe's video, Project Veritas, where they have this CNN producer on this hidden camera admitting the Russia story is fiction. And apparently it is now trending on YouTube. I imagine YouTube is going to slap it down. It's all over Twitter. So in your copious amounts of free time, please grab that video, post it to your social media, send it to everybody you know. We need to get this out. This is a broadside against the lying corporate media. We need to take advantage of it. Now, getting back to the war zones, Yemen isn't providing details. But apparently they targeted a Saudi warship off the Muka coast. And apparently the warship was carrying out hostile acts in the territorial waters of Yemen. And it was targeted with what is described as an appropriate weapon. And they're not elaborating on that, but the shooting is continuing to go on over there. Now, as you know, they just went through a change of leadership over in Saudi Arabia. And Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is now heir to the throne and de facto ruler of the country because Dad's 81 and not doing all that well. So he's running the place right now. But apparently, some of the Saudi tribes are saying they're not going to swear allegiance to the Crown Prince. And apparently, this story was actually being carried on Saudi TV. And Mohammed bin Salman ordered the channel shut down for daring to mention that not everybody in Saudi Arabia is happy with his accession to the throne here. Netanyahu is out there warning Iran over Syria involvement after the Golan exchange. So Netanyahu is talking tough with Iran while Israel tries to steal the Golan Heights for itself, which only makes sense to Netanyahu, I think, at this particular point. Israel is also saying that Israel's shelling of the Golan is actually going to flash back because it will embolden the terrorists to shoot into Israel in the hope that Israel will then shell the Syrian forces, which probably is going to happen. But again, every time there's supposedly a shell or a rocket into Israel, inevitably it hits an empty dirt lot, no damage, nobody's hurt. And again, Israel is now bombing the Gaza Strip. And let's see, they target positions belonging to the Azzedine al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, and apparently strikes against positions in Khan Yunis and Rafah. So they're out there just bombing Gaza again. They didn't even bother with a rocket here. Actually, Hamas is accusing Israel of fabricating the claims of rocket attacks to justify the airstrikes in Gaza. Because inevitably, nobody can find the rockets. They never hit a target. They never hurt anybody in Israel. So, yeah, we know this is what they're doing. Okay. Up in the European Union, boy, thank goodness for the United States Supreme Court coming on out and ruling unanimously there is no such thing as a hate speech qualifier on the First Amendment because Israel is still going around the world trying to get this put in. That hate speech can be banned regardless of the freedom of speech laws of whatever country it is. If it's declared hate speech, it can be banned, and by default, any criticism of Israel's government is hate speech. Because if it was anybody else that was stealing other people's land and behaving that way, nobody would really care. That's what Israel is saying. And again, trying to defend Israel's actions by saying you just hate the Israeli people, that's like trying to defend the actions of the Nazis by saying you just hate the Germans. Doesn't really work out. So during a visit to the Israeli Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem, European Union Justice Commissioner Vera Jourova is basically saying there are now efforts in the EU to help Israel suppress criticism. And basically in the EU, criticism of Israel is now illegal, along with questioning the historical authenticity of certain aspects of the history of World War II. And as if the world wasn't steeped in enough blood already, apparently Chinese troops have entered Indian territory in the state of Sikkim and destroyed 2 Indian bunkers. Chinese troops are also engaged in a fight with Indian troops who are guarding the border at the location. This is considered a major scuffle. The whole world seems to want to go to war. I know I don't. Pretty sure Claire doesn't. And I'm pretty sure none of you want to. Because with the next big bang, they're going to bring back the draft. They can't get enough cannon fodder under the current system. They've already relaxed the rules. There used to be very strict requirements for military enlistment. They've been backing off all of those things. If you've got a pulse and you know which end of the gun to point at the bad guy, you're in. Meanwhile, the U.S. has deployed 10 long-range air-to-ground missiles in South Korea. And apparently these are joint air-to-surface standoff missiles. And they've been deployed around 180 kilometers south of Seoul. And they're planning a live-fire exercise in the event of a 6th North Korean nuclear test. By golly, that'll show them. All right, so how much is all of this costing? Well, as it turns out, it is a lot. The House Armed Services Committee has just unveiled an almost $700 billion military spending bill. And they've been out there saying, we need to spend more money, we need to spend more money. Actually, you just need to spend it a little more wisely. Stay away from those boondoggle projects. Actually get somebody in there who's going to get value for money. That's how Harry Truman became popular in the years leading up to World War II. When everybody knew there was a war coming, Harry Truman basically went on out and said, these military contractors are taking all this money, they're not delivering what they're supposed to. And it was time to stop that. And we know there's huge amounts of waste in the military. Grossly inefficient. And then there is that small matter of a few $1 trillion that has simply gone missing from the Pentagon. Let's find where that money went and bring it back and take this $700 billion and turn it over to our infrastructure. Now, unfortunately, there is a provision in this new military bill that the United States is going to walk out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. This treaty goes back to 1987. Yesterday we ran the story where Russia said this is a provocation. Now the U.S. is claiming that one of the new Russian missiles violates the treaty. Russia is saying no. And at this point, especially considering that whopper they laid on us earlier today about Syria's Assad getting ready to gas his own people again, I'm tending to go with Russia's view of this. But they're going to suspend the treaty, and this $700 billion budget includes funding for the United States to start building intermediate-range missiles, the ones banned by the treaty. Okay, we're going to take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? You know, I just called my congressman here in North Carolina, and I didn't talk to him. I talked to some intern, right? Mm-hmm. And I told her, I said, look, you please pass this message. We don't want war. We have enough war. I was in the military already. I swore allegiance to this country, but not to this kind of crap. I said, we need to stop. We need to get out of it. We need to get out of the Middle East. We need to bring our troops home. And then it also includes getting out of Afghanistan. And I told her, I said, nobody believes this nonsense about Assad. I told her Assad is actually protecting his people, including Christians in his country. And I told her Russia is not a communist country anymore either, in case you don't know. She didn't even know that. So did you know that Russia is one of the most Christian countries in the world today? Oh, she didn't know. I told you. Do you know what nuclear war would mean? Not really. You know, I'm wondering. I think that I explained to her what one nuclear bomb would do, and I said, you wanted to talk about global warming. Well, you'd have at the point of impact, and probably ranging for about 5 to 10 miles, you'd have probably about 10,000 degrees above Fahrenheit, and that might even be a low amount. I'm not even sure exactly what it would be. And I said, kind of destruction. I said, it would probably be the end of the world as we know it. Okay, that's how serious this is. Oh, but I says, now, I just hope you pass on this message to the congressman. And by the way, the congressman is Meadows.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility he's up to speak. He's a good congressman, basically. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus. I think he's the head of the Freedom Caucus. And I said, this got to stop. He said, look, I could call you about the health care bill, but the fact of the matter is, if we're going to get into a war with Russia, there's no need about a health care bill, because I said each of us have about 7,000 nuclear weapons and the means for delivery. So, we could try to work out health care. And then I told her another thing, too. I says, what we could do, though, as far as health care goes, if we cut that out, we're spending over $600 billion on military budget. Now, if we cut that in half, we could have the most awesome healthcare system in the world, even if it would mean single payer, because it would be what would be paid for and everybody would get proper care. We did that, and maybe cut out a few other federal departments, or made them a little smaller or something. I'd cut out the CIA and the FBI too. It was up to me, and the Department of Education. But anyway, I didn't tell her that. I said, cut that military budget in half and see what we'd have. And we'd still have enough bombs to blow up the rest of the world a few times over.
Yes.
It's true. So but this airhead doesn't even understand. And then she tells me she's going to law school. She's going to law school. She's sitting there in Washington, D.C. as an intern. I'm not going to tell her. I'm not going to say her name. I'll be nice about that, okay? She's sitting there in Washington, D.C. as an intern. She doesn't even understand the implications of a nuclear war. She doesn't understand that Russia's not, that Russia today is a democratic, actually Christian nation with a lot of values that I didn't tell her that they actually pay people to have children there rather than go and try to kill them, I didn't tell her that. I had only so much time. But I said, they're a decent nation. They simply want peace. They don't want these terrorists right at their border. There's a few thousand Russians that supposedly have joined ISIS, and they're very worried that they're going to come back into Russia. And they have very reason to be concerned. And I said, we got to stop this. I said, you got to get the message out. I said, I don't care what they say in the mainstream media. Nobody listens to that anyway. Just most of your information, I told her, get it on YouTube, get it on the net, get it. There's all kinds of information out there about the truth. But I just don't understand. I just don't understand what these people think. They're actually lying to us. Can you imagine? I just heard on my way home from the gym. I heard on the fake news network, it's Fox News Network. I call it CNN the crap news network.
Okay.
But anyway, on the fake news network, they were saying like this is fact about Syria's preparing for another new the chemical weapon attack.
Yeah.
As if it was fact. And you got that other airhead there, Nikki Haley, who's warning, giving all kinds of warnings.
To Russia and Iran. Yeah.
Yeah, to Russia and Iran. I'm thinking with Trump. I said, there's either a number of things. Either he's plain dumb. He's not anything that we thought we had. He's not only dumb, but he's weak. He can't handle these deep state types, and they've got him basically almost a prisoner. Either that, or he was lying to us outright when he ran. I don't know what to believe. Well, maybe it's a combination of both.
I think it's a combination of both there, but certainly his continuance of the neocon war policy is very alarming. And again, so many of the things Trump was trying to do, we don't hear about them. The Vaccine Safety Commission, we're not hearing about that. there was going to be this big investigation into the pedophilia crisis in our nation. There have been a few arrests, and then that went away. And, of course, Hillary Clinton and her cronies are still walking around free today. And so overall, I would say that I'm very disappointed in Donald Trump. Yes, he's going to clean up the immigration issue, but that's just one area where he's going along with that. Maybe just somebody said, you don't want to be the president when we lose a war, so we got to go all in, and he fell for it. But if we continue on this pathway, and I understand the thinking in Washington, D.C., if they don't get a world war, the economy and the government will collapse. But if they keep going on this path, we're going to wind up at war with Russia, and we're probably going to lose it.
Well, I don't think we'll lose it. I don't think anybody's going to win a war like that if it goes nuclear, and it's very likely to go nuclear, one way or the other.
Yes.
Whoever on the losing side will start chucking the nukes. And I told that woman, I said, look, at the very least, we get bogged down in some war in the Middle East again. Forget about Trump getting reelected, and forget about even Congressman Meadows getting reelected, because I'm not going to. I certainly wouldn't vote for him. Get us bogged down. I'll vote for third party. I just won't vote. And I said, if you get it, and at the worst case scenario, there won't be another election. As a matter of fact, there's not even going to be an election in 2018 because there won't be a planet left to hold an election on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people don't seem to understand. Don't people understand the power of these nuclear weapons? Do people not understand what 7,000 nuclear weapons and it means to deliver them, what it actually means, what kind of destruction it can do? Are people that dumbed down?
For our generation, it's an abstraction. We've seen nuclear bombs on TV screens and movie film. It's an abstraction here. I think one of the most powerful tools that are out there is this website called nukemap.com, where you can put in your location and then run a simulation of some of the world's standard nuclear weapons at a nearby target and see how you're going to do. And the standard Russian nuclear weapon, if it was dropped on Pearl Harbor, is going to pretty much wipe out the entire south side of the island. Because the Chinese missiles are not as accurate, they go for a bigger nuke. Just one of those is going to melt the entire island of Oahu into green glass. And that is how scary these things are. But for too many people, it is an abstraction. But we're all worried here in Hawaii. People who are...
and now you tell me about the thing with China and India.
Yeah, because they're both nuclear powers as well. Yeah, I'll hold you over. Hello, I'm America. Welcome back to our show. We're still talking with Mark in North Carolina. And what did you want to add? Mark, are you there?
I want to add. Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
I just want to add that people need to call their congressmen and also, like I just did, or senators, whoever they can get a hold of, and let them know the same thing. We don't want any war. Maybe that's the last hope to stop it. Let them know that it's not going to be productive for them, and that if it's going to be just a war, I say keep just, but it's bad enough. Another bogged down type of war like in Iraq or Afghanistan, that should cost them their seats.
I agree.
By the way,
and when people call their Congress critters, you need to add in there that you are just not believing this latest bovine excrement from the White House about Assad getting ready to gas his people. Yeah, no, we need to disabuse them we need to disabuse the government of the notion that we are a bunch of lemmings and sheep that are still buying all this stuff. Now, obviously, this intern law student you spoke to at your Congress Critter's office is probably still buying what she gets off the TV screens. But Hillary was out there screaming, we have to resist, we have to resist. Well, she's right. She just had the wrong target. We have to resist this push forward into war because we're going to lose this one, people. And it's going to be an ugly situation.
There's one thing else I'd like to tell people listening, okay?
Yeah.
I try to tell other people also. Call some of these neocon, and that's what they really are, talk shows. And most talk shows on the AM and FM radio, that's what they are. Call them and pretend you're somebody else. Oh, you don't have to give your real name. But more important, you don't even have to give the right message. Give the call screen or something that you know the neocon wants to hear, and then come in and tell them the truth. Tell them what you really want to say. Because that works too. Because other people listen. They may not like it, but other people listen. And it also pisses them off something awful when they do that. I did it at the Breitbart the other day. And man, they were had 3 happy campers. So, you know, you could, and I did it to David Webb also. They also, he's another talk show host on Sirius XM. So, people need to do that also. Make it clear. We're not buying your crap. We don't want war. We don't believe in mainstream media. We don't believe mainstream talk either. Myself, I'm not a conservative or a liberal. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I like to consider myself kind of a patriot, a patriot, but not a patriot who just waves the flag and thinks everything's fine and dandy. No, a real patriot questions his country. He speaks out when he sees things in the world. That's a patriot. Our founding fathers were patriots. George Washington was a patriot. And by the way, I also quoted George Washington to her too when he said, "Avoid foreign entanglements." I said that means I told her we need to get out of NATO, we need to get out of all this stuff, and we need to get out. For peace sake, let's get out of Afghanistan. But you don't want to send another 5,000-6,000 people, more troops in Afghanistan. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Well, it keeps the heroin flowing to the American drug lords, who I'm sure are very generous campaign supporters.
Yeah, I guess they'll be really happy.
All right, well, Mark, I got to let you go. I've let you yak for a while. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be back with hour number 2. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And one of our listeners just emailed me the article from Breitbart that is covering this story about Assad is going to use the gas. And Breitbart, of course, is running it as straight news, no commentary, no hint of a doubt that this may not be real. Now, normally Breitbart's readership tends to be pretty neutral. There's a lot of active debates and everything. In this case, though, over 90% of the comments are saying this story is pure bovine excrement. Nobody is believing this. Donald Trump is celebrating that CNN's credibility has been hammered by the Russia story, not realizing that the credibility of the Trump administration, the Trump presidency, the White House itself, is following CNN into the shredder at this point. All right, let's grab a phone call. Kevin in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Mike. I was wondering if the 25th Amendment could apply to Congress.
No, it's specific to the presidency.
Man, I wish it could apply to Congress.
There's a whole line of people who need to be declared mentally incompetent and kicked out of there.
Absolutely. I called in the other day, and I didn't get to flesh out my source to you. I called in about a tape, a recording, and you wanted a URL. This tape that I'm talking about with Hillary and Pelosi and Comey and Podesta, this hasn't been leaked. And my source is Larry Nickel. It was dropped on the John B. Wells Caravan to Midnight a few weeks ago. This tape, Nichols is one, and this was out of Larry Nichols' mouth himself, that he heard the recording, and this tape does exist. That's why I'm unable to get a URL to you, because it's never really been leaked. And Nichols dropped the bombshell. So if you could get a hold of Nichols and have him on your show,
all right, I will definitely do that. We've had him on the show before, but the fact that Larry Nichols heard this tape does not, in fact, mean it is still in existence. Probably something that damaging has already been burned, shredded, and peed on by a wild moose. So it may not be there. But depending upon his health, I will try and get him back on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Richard in Washington. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
The other day there when the president was in France and he backed out of this carbon tax fiasco.
Yes.
What happened is what I couldn't get my head around is either that day or the next day they had all this corporate logos paraded behind the mainstream media, and they all disapproved of his actions. I can't get my head around it. What is that all about?
Well, the idea is that the human-caused global warming movement is a big moneymaker. The so-called educational channels are making money off of it. The networks are making money off of it. And, of course, because of human-caused global warming, there have been very generous government subsidies to anybody who is working on clean energy technology. A lot of these have gone bust, like the various wind farm projects and solar cells. But with the end of the Paris Accord, those subsidies are going to stop.
Well, I couldn't believe how they had a match of all these multinational corporations. All their logos were parading behind these announcers, and I said, "What is this all about?" It just seemed like they were in mass.
Well, I didn't see the actual video. Are we sure that these were people supporting the corporations?
No, this was on the news.
Okay.
This was on the national news.
Okay. Well,
and they had all of these corporations were not in favor of it. Like, who cares?
Yeah, well, that's, again, part of that whole global warming agenda was subsidies to these large corporations. And we've hit a point in our economy right now where everything is being subsidized on the back of the taxpayers. And we're going to be talking about the Italian banks here in a little bit. It's becoming impossible for a large business to stay in business because nobody has any money, so they're literally propping it all up with subsidies.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a good point because PBS always seems to slip in this global warming agenda. They always seem to slide that in. And I watch PBS all the time. And it kind of irritates me how everybody's on that track and there's never anything to the contrary.
Well, that's why I don't watch PBS anymore.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff there, too, but you got to filter it out. Thank God I listened to you.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words here. Claire and I actually don't have a lot of time to watch TV. We DVR a lot of stuff, but our entertainment TV watching is very, very small. We work very, very long hours to do what we're doing here. So, you know, we don't watch.
Well, you're a really good resource. I can really, filter out the wheat from the shaft when I watch the mainstream media.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, and we're going to let you go here. It's time to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And before we get back to the war zones here, Trump has now officially nominated Christopher Wray as the new director of the FBI, and going to be looking into this guy's background, but he is one of the people who successfully took down Enron, also known as the Crooked E. And there is a documentary about that whole Enron thing called The Smartest Guys in the Room, about just, again, it was a massive fraud. It was a massive fraud. And again, we might save ourselves a lot of time and effort by just keeping a list of the companies that aren't surviving on fraud. And we can use another post-it for that one. Okay, getting on back to the news. Russia has just unveiled at the Paris Air Show their latest combat aircraft, the MiG-35 Fulcrum F, and apparently it is a showstopper. And they're saying testing of the aircraft will be complete by the end of the year. And this, I saw some video of this thing doing aerobatics. Oh, boy. Twice the performance at half the cost. That's what Russia is doing here right now. All right, now there was another test. It's a little more serious and somber. The Bulava ICBM, and this is a sub-launched nuclear ballistic missile. It is MIRVed, and I presume because this is their latest and greatest that these are the MIRVs that can maneuver on reentry, which is going to make them virtually impossible to hit. So, again, let's not do this, people. Let's not do this. I think we can all unite around one thing. We don't want a war with Russia. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. Yeah, I have a quick comment to make. You know that we learned in school that World War I started in 1917, World War II in 41, and World War III is coming soon. But, this world had so many wars. They could be considered world wars. In your opinion, what's a world war?
Well, under U.S. military doctrine, a world war is considered a two-front war on two separate continents. And under that definition, I think we've actually been involved in that for quite some time. But the designation a world war tends to be something that historians and the media put together. I mean, when 1917 happened, they didn't call it World War I. They didn't even realize that we're going to have to start counting these things. And it wasn't, right. And again, World War I really was confined mostly to Europe, but it was still called a World War. Obviously, World War II was much more globally engaged. This one's going to be everywhere. There isn't going to be anywhere that is not going to feel this thing.
Right. But you understand my point. This world had so many wars that anyone could have been considered a world war.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And, maybe this is the reason why extraterrestrial civilizations aren't bothering to visit our planet. We haven't grown out of that stage of killing each other. So we can't be bothered with. We're too primitive.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, along the line of all that spending for the Defense Department, and we have seen over the last couple of months, all these people coming on out saying, well, we need to upgrade this, we need to buy this, we need to maintain parity with all these other countries who were not bothering anybody. Article out of Sputnik News, North Korean, Russian, Chinese missile tech advances raise threat to the United States. And basically saying that these other nations are pretty much technologically on a par with the United States. And even if the missiles don't carry nuclear warheads, they could be a serious problem. Some of them are very fast, faster than the phalanx can deal with. And again, much more maneuverable, much more stealthy. And if they're able to produce them at low cost, there are going to be more of them. So, all right, let's get into the economic news here. Jim Rickards is out there, according to an article on Zero Hedge, saying that the Federal Reserve is going to cause the next recession. And he's talking about how the recent tightening, raising of interest rates, could lead to a recession. And he's recommending gold as a crisis hedge. He's also concerned Bitcoin is in a bubble, and I agree with him on that one. And if the economy does go into a recession or it does crash, you know who they're going to blame for it? They're going to blame Donald Trump. And Donald Trump did not create this economic mess. It was created for him. All right, let's see. The 5 big banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, UBS, RBS, Barclays, Citigroup, have all pled guilty to rigging the currency markets. And collectively, these 5 banks have paid over 300 corporate fines and settlements in the last 20 years. Nobody has gone to jail. Just a fine, which they pass on to their customers and clients or take off their taxes or both. Wall Street is a den of crooks. So is Washington, D.C. Now, apparently, Donald Trump is looking again at allowing oil development of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. And it's going to spawn this battle, because obviously the oil companies have been wanting to get in there. Now, when the global warming debate came along, leasing and drilling in this wildlife refuge was probably the most ferociously contested item on the oil and gas industry's wish list. And now that Donald Trump has pulled out of the climate deal and global warming is not an issue, the oil companies are lusting after that particular area in which to drill. At some point, And I know about the abiotic theory of the production of oil. At some point, we're going to run out of easily reachable oil. Look how deep they're already having to go to get oil now. That's what led to the Deepwater Horizon blowout disaster. It is going to run out. Even if you subscribe to the theory that oil is being produced in the deep crust, we're burning it up faster than it can be replaced. And if we use it all up before we have developed something to replace it, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And I think that is something that Trump ought to be looking at. And I know the oil companies, they absolutely do not want any alternatives unless they own them. But look how much oil is going to be burned up in the wars. Yes, we have nuclear power on the submarines and some of the aircraft carriers, but by and large, your regular Navy ships are burning petroleum. So are all the warplanes. You can't run those things on solar cells. We need an alternative. One possibility, if we could develop clean, safe fusion power, using hydrolysis to split seawater into hydrogen and oxygen, let the oxygen go up into the atmosphere, and develop systems for substituting hydrogen where we use gasoline now. Hydrogen, when it burns, is very energetic. But we've got to do something. There's a simple term in all mining extraction industries. It's called the unit cost of extraction. How much does it cost to get blah to where we can use it? And you can express that cost as money, or in the case of oil, how much energy it takes. And on the day when it takes a barrel's worth of oil's energy to get a barrel's worth of oil to the surface of the ground, the party's over. Doesn't matter how much more is down there. We're too dependent on oil. And unfortunately, most of the recent alternative energy programs have turned out to be giant scams. Anyway, getting on back to the economic news. As I mentioned before, Trump is going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20. He's also going to be meeting with Angela Merkel. And apparently the bone of contention there is free trade and the steel tariffs. And, of course, Merkel is very upset that Trump pulled out of the Paris climate deal. So Trump is definitely going to be earning his paycheck. Well, that's right, he doesn't take a paycheck. He's definitely going to be feeling the job over there in Hamburg, Germany, which, by the way, is a very, very lovely town. Story coming out of drhousingbubble.com. We've reached a stage where more and more homeowners are treating their homes like ATMs. It's a trend that we see when the economy is tightening, where people are literally having to take the equity out of their home just to survive. And home equity withdrawals are rising at the fastest pace since the Great Recession. It's a warning sign. Warning sign. Now, as you probably already heard, because this seems to be what the corporate media is obsessing about most, the vote on the new Republican health care bill and the repeal of Obamacare has been put on hold until after the July 4th recess. Apparently, there are 6 Republican senators who say they cannot vote for it in its current version. And I can understand their area of contention. The Democrats and the liberals want to keep Obamacare. It has Obama's name on it. And, of course, all the industries currently making money off of this scam don't want it to go away. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, what they've crafted is just another Obamacare, only it favors different companies. Different people are going to get the money. I think we need to look at that study that was done out in California, where they basically ran a study saying if single payer would work in California, and they found out it was going to be much less expensive than Obamacare or Trump Care, and everybody would have coverage. We need to look at what works in other countries and copy it. But all of these convoluted bills are not about caring for the American people. It's about sucking money out of your pocket and putting it into favored cronies' wallets. That's really what it's all about. I'm hearing a lot of warplanes out there right now. It's very, very stressful. Here's a good example of how things can go wrong in an economy. The domino effect. Apparently, there's a company, Peerless Potato Chips. It's an 89-year-old business, and apparently when Central Grocers declared bankruptcy, they owed Peerless Potato Chips a huge amount of money, which now they're not going to be able to pay, and Peerless Potato Chip has now been driven out of business. We're going to see more and more of this happening, where something will fail, and it will drag other companies down with it through no fault of their own. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a phone call. Richard in Washington, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You were just talking about oil.
Yes.
And how they're going to be running out. Back in 1976, up in Prudhoe Bay on Gull Island, they were doing some drilling, and they punched into this oil, and they figured, they pressure tested it and whatever, and they figured there was as much oil there in Gull Island as there is in Saudi Arabia, and they capped it.
Okay.
They never said anything else about it. They capped it in '76, and all this pipeline, I'm willing to bet anything that pipeline has something to tie into this oil discovery. And it's just sitting up there, and they pressure tested and everything in '76 and just capped it. And it was on the news for like a day or so, and then after that, they didn't say another thing about it.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's a fact. And at that time, I don't know why they said it. I don't think they realized the capacity that it had. They probably just figured it was just a strike, but then later on when they tested it, it was very substantial.
Well, that's good to know, and we know that there are a lot of oil fields held in reserve for economic or political or military reasons, and sometimes the quality of oil down there, there may be a lot of it, but it may be poor quality, meaning they're going to have to spend more money refining it. Yeah, instead of invading all these other countries, let's use the oil that we have. But, of course, we know the real reason for invading the oil-producing nations isn't to get the oil, but to dictate what currency it's being sold for.
Well, I think it's probably a mixed bag.
Probably.
They want to take their resources, and we're going to sit on ours.
Yes. Again, whoever controls the oil controls conventional warfare. Oil is the lifeblood of the war machine. If you can't get oil, the war is already over.
Well, even the thought of it makes me ill. Having a war, it's just they don't know what they're getting themselves into.
No, they don't. They don't. They think war is what they've been seeing on TV screens and movie screens, and it isn't like that at all.
Yeah, yeah. My family goes back to the French and Indian War, and it's just ridiculous how these people just use us for gun fodder.
Yeah, it is. And again, there is some flaw in us that we keep letting it happen over and over and over again.
Try to do something about it. You can't do a thing about it. They just blow you off.
Well, I'm trying to do something about it. I've been trying to do something about it for 20 years now, and unfortunately,
well, you're right.
It is looking like I failed, which
You're about the only person I know that's really on track.
All right. Okay, well, Richard, thanks an awful lot for the information there, and we're going to go ahead and switch over to Michael in Kentucky. Michael, what is on your mind?
Hey, all right. I wasn't expecting to come on this soon, but the guy is right. Lindsey Williams was a witness to it. There was documentation to it. There's Paul Fromm that was with Atlantic Ridgefield. What they did confirm was the seismic research that they had done.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just Gull Island, it was Flackman Island. And there is a swath of oil along the north slope of Alaska that has not been tapped into, that is unequaled on the earth at the time it was discovered. It goes way into Canada and all across the north slope of Alaska. It is sweet crude, not as good as the North Brent sweet crude, but it doesn't have a lot of sulfur in it. The Alaska Oil Pipeline is probably at least 10 years beyond its original design limit. They've had 48 modified 747 jet turbine engines punching natural gas back into the ground, into the formation, because Jimmy Carter proposed to build a pipeline down to a liquefaction plant through Canada, which would mean that America would be paying royalties back to the Queen. They could have built a liquefaction plant somewhere along the Alaska Highway or even down in, but, you know, that's what this war in Qatar is about, is they are the largest producer of liquefied natural gas now, and there's 2 different pipelines going across Syria or through Kurdistan into Europe, and they don't want Russia to have more of a factor into the market with that. So, anyway, Lindsey Williams wrote a book about it called The Energy Non-Crisis. You can look it up. He's about to die if he's not already passed away.
All right. Well, Michael, we're going to have to let you go. Take a break for commercials.
Sure.
We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones here. Fred in Iowa. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I went to Alaska in August the 10th, 1962. But I worked on a pipeline in '76, and there was rumors and talk going around about Gull Island. But I was so damn ignorant then, I didn't know, and I didn't pay any attention. But a lot of what that last caller said, Lynn, he's right on. Now, about Lindsey Williams, he put out a lot of good information, but I think he could have been led down the primrose path in certain areas. But anyhow, that's all I got to say. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day yourself. We're going to switch over to Frank in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Wow. For once, I think I actually agree with Fred on something. Yeah, it's been several years, I guess, since I've heard an interview with Lindsey Williams. He was he's a real character. I know he used to make the rounds about every 6 to 8 months, and a lot of what he said would not come to fruition, and maybe some of it did, hit and miss. But you know, he was a pastor, and I actually called in, and I just caught the tail end of the two callers ago. So he basically already told you about Lindsey Williams. But yeah, he actually revealed, I don't think he meant to, but I think it was Alex Jones. He said, well, you know who my contact is, Alex? And Alex was like, yeah. He's like, well, he's retired now. He's a Tel Aviv. And Alex was like, oh, you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say where he is. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. That's something I picked up on in one of many interviews that I listened to. But here's my theory, Mike. I believe that that they don't want the oil at Gull Island. I believe they wanted an excuse to be in the Middle East, and oil was it. Oil is our way of life. We're willing to go to war for it, and all that. And it also allows people like the Saudis to be the boogeyman. Okay, they're propped up. They're told. I remember Lindsey Williams telling this story. They were told, look, we have all the oil we need. We don't need your oil, but we're going to play a little game on the people, on the sheep, on the masses. We're going to pretend like we need your oil. You're going to make tons of money, but we also want you to put some of that money. We're going to direct you on where to invest some of that money, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe Hollywood, maybe some on the stock market, that kind of thing. But we're going to play a little game on the American people. This gives us an excuse to be in the Middle East for greater Israel, and it gives us the boogeyman that we need.
Well, yeah, it actually would dovetail as part of the petrodollar deal. I'm looking at, there's a lot of web coverage about this guy and about this Gull Island. And according to this article I'm looking at, this is in petroleumnews.com, saying there are 200 years worth of oil underneath Alaska's North Slope. And I know they're starting to harvest some of that because I briefly got into watching Ice Road Truckers because I've never been to Alaska. I'd love to go someday see the aurora. Yeah, there is a lot of oil stuff going on up there at the moment, and apparently there's a lot more oil to be harvested.
I only went to Alaska once, but mostly flew over, went through the airport. I was a kid carrying a machine gun through the airport, and everybody was looking at me like I was funny. But anyway, I was just passing through.
Okay.
Getting on another plane to go overseas. But all right, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. The phone lines are now open. Getting on back to the economic news, there's a very wonderful article over at AntoniusAquinas.com saying that the ultimate regulatory reform for our economy would be to abolish fractional reserve banking. And that is certainly a major step where banks are literally allowed to create money out of thin air to loan to you. And the idea is they have to have a cash reserve, which is then subject to a multiplier. It used to be 8, now it's a lot higher. And so if you put $100 into a savings account, the bank can now loan out $800 in instantly created money. And, of course, it's a scam. And private central banking is a scam. It is all a scam. It is as crooked a system as the Bank of England. And when King George III passed his Currency Act, saying, yeah, you have to use these banknotes loaned at interest from the Bank of England, and impoverish the American people. And that is a primary cause of the American Revolution. They don't teach that in school anymore. They don't want the smart kids standing up and saying, hey, wait a minute, we're back in that same system again. Now, getting on over to Great Britain and Europe, apparently, according to a British think tank who are looking at the letter of the law of the European Union Compact, if you will, the think tank is saying that Theresa May can walk away from Brexit without paying a penny. If Brexit tries to punish the UK should just stand firm. And I absolutely agree. I don't even know why there are negotiations. Great Britain should be telling the European Union, this is a raw deal. We want out. A lot of other countries are getting ready to do that. Ireland is now talking about leaving the European Union because they can do a lot better outside the EU. The EU is just another level of bureaucracy and taxing authority on top of the ones you already have. It was never, ever going to work. Now, getting into the world of political correctness and this, I self-identify as whatever. I self-identify as a very wealthy talk radio host. And hopefully you'll all go along with that. But this, play the theme from the Twilight Zone on this one. The University of Arizona is a visiting scholar, has a visiting scholar, Florentin Felix Morin. And basically, this guy is out there saying that he self-identifies as a hippopotamus. I'm not kidding you. This guy claims he self-identifies as a hippopotamus, and now the University of Arizona is trying to distance themselves from this guy. But it shows just how completely overboard this has all gone. And maybe that was this guy's point by saying, I self-identify as a hippopotamus. He's trying to make the point that it has really reached an absurd degree with I self-identify as this. Remember when all of these black activists turned out to actually be white and they were wearing makeup or tanning thing? Well, I identify as a black person. And it just sort of cascaded from there. All right, let us talk about computers because unfortunately there is a new ransomware spreading all over Britain and Europe. And apparently it's huge. Ukraine was the first place badly affected. State power distributor and Kiev's main airport got shut down by this thing. Supermarket checkouts are hacked ATMs showing error message. This is a massive, massive cyber attack. And apparently Merck Sharp and Dome, a U.S. pharmaceutical company, is also involved. And the phone system appeared to be down when Mail Online contacted their UK offices. This is apparently a nasty one. Russian oil plant, Danish shipping firm, all affected. So just be very, very careful. And again, I have a comment. With all the damage being caused by ransomware, where's the NSA in all this? Where's the FBI? Where's the CIA? This is a clear and present danger, not just to our IT infrastructure, but to our economy. Nobody seems to care. We're too busy out there warning Assad not to gas his people again, even though he didn't do it the first time. Anyway. Over at the originalantiwar.com, they have an article, The Age of No Privacy, the Surveillance State Shifts into High Gear. And they certainly are. Every day that goes by, we hear another story about how the NSA has found a loophole in the laws that we're supposed to protect our privacy, and they can move the data to a server outside the country and go through all the data that they want and still be technically in compliance with the law. That was actually the origin of the Five Eyes program, or Echelon. These 5 countries got together, they spied on each other's citizens, which was perfectly legal, then they would trade the data back and forth. Right to privacy? What privacy? All right, we're going to talk to Tom on the Big Island. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was just letting you know that our infrastructure in Hawaii is failing again. All the computers for the DMV, you can't go in and get your car registered. Can't get your driver's license. They can't run any checks on anything.
Is this just the DMV, or have they been hit with this ransomware?
I don't know. No one seems to, at DMV or mayor's office, or nobody seems to want to answer any questions. They just all kind of laugh and say they have no idea when it's coming back.
Okay, well, apparently this new ransomware, it can infect other computers over Wi-Fi, so it's obviously spreading very, very rapidly, and I would not be surprised if it reaches the United States of America. This could be the beginning of the virtual 911 that we've talked about. You know, just crash all the computers and say, oh, Iran did this to us, we must invade. And we've been talking about that for a very, very long time.
So you haven't heard of any other big computer outfits in the state going down?
Well, I've been doing the radio show for the last couple of hours here. I mean, my computer connection is working, which means Spectrum is working. So at this point, other than the DMV, I'm unaware of any major computer outages.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all. I just wanted to let you know. Things in Hawaii are falling apart.
Oh, they certainly, well, the entire country, the money's all being spent on war or medical costs or Israel, and it is all falling apart. We walk around and cracked pavement. We're seeing all these homeless people. In fact, it was kind of interesting. Claire and I have become trashologists, which means when we drive down the street from our home, we can look at a pile of trash that's on the curb waiting for the big, bulky pickup, and we can tell instantly, did somebody renovate a room? Did they get new furniture? Or is this a basically eviction/bailout pile? And yesterday we counted no less than 8 of these piles of everything that they had in their home now out on the curb. And maybe they were evicted and they're joining the homeless, or maybe they just decided it was time to get out of Hawaii and they couldn't afford to take their stuff with them. We counted 8 of these along a 1-mile stretch of road, and that is very, very telling.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mike, for helping get the word out, and you're doing a great job. Thank you much, and have a good day, sir.
Same to you. Aloha, brah, and thank you for the kind words. Boy, it's amazing. Let's see. Anyway, we're talking about surveillance, the surveillance state. They want to watch us. They want to keep track of us. They want to spy on us all the time. They're terrified of us. They're clearly terrified that the American people are waking up. We're taking the red pill, for you Matrix fans. We're not believing what the government says anymore, especially after that whopper this morning. Nobody's buying that one. We're not going to do what we're being told anymore. We're becoming disobedient. So they're going to spy on us. Spy on this. Another alarming article over here from Investment Watch blog. Privacy will be eliminated within 10 years. Now, that sounds very dire, but my concern is simply this. Humans have a psychological need for privacy. And if you are a parent and you're dealing with kids who are just getting into those teen years, you know how touchy they are. Their nerve ends all over. And they need their privacy. They're not doing anything bad, but they want to feel that there's a private space there. If you take that away, you can drive people crazy. You remember some years ago there was a problem with postal workers going postal and starting to shoot people, and psychologists thought one of the causes of that was this overemphasis on efficiency experts. Watching the postal workers in the post office all the time, telling them how to flick their wrist when the letter went, and just micromanaging them and watching them constantly. And they started flipping out. Humans have a need for privacy, and it doesn't mean we're doing something bad. We're just doing something private. Our Constitution is supposed to guarantee our right of privacy, but unfortunately we are living with a government that really wants the Bill of Rights to go away. And again, I applaud the Supreme Court for their unanimous vote that there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. Now then, getting on back to computers, as you know, there's a great deal of censorship going on online by the giants. And they're trying to downplay the independent media or marginalize us. And there's a very interesting article. This came out of the Free Thought Project, basically saying that there are some very disturbing video channels at YouTube which are ostensibly videos about kids for kids. But there's a very evident pandering toward pedophiles who are probably going to be watching these videos. And we get back to that desire for privacy here. And YouTube apparently has not had a problem with this. But at the same time, they're basically censoring independent media videos. And they do it simply because someone flags the content. YouTube doesn't even check these things out. If somebody does not like your point of view, for example, let's say if somebody over in Hillary's campaign doesn't like a video that I made talking about Vince Foster, they go to YouTube, they flag it, and it gets shut down. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And to quote from Jurassic Park, boy, do I hate being right all the time. Somebody just sent me this article where the British Defense Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, is basically out there saying that a cyber attack will lead to a military retaliation. And very odd that this comes out on the exact same day that this ransomware is sweeping all across Britain and Europe. I don't know who they're going to blame it on. Oh, it was North Korea. It was the war is on. It's amazing here. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Chris in St. Petersburg, Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, you were mentioning earlier that in regards to the Project Veritas video, which I saw of the CNN producer, talking about the amusing principles of journalism and then apparently ambivalently admitting to be a correspondent prostitute.
Yep.
I think that, as you said, that it does not equate to Trump's approval rating improving just because CNN is decreasing in Fall Guy fashion. And particularly for the deceased, life is too short for us to not take our best stab at the beast. So we don't need to ally ourselves of those like CNN who don't use the very best ammunition for doing so. And in those regards, then we should call upon impeachment for Trump's not having any authorization for use of military force nor a congressional declaration of war for bombing Syria and menacing Syria. Well, that's has yet to be seen, of course. But the fact that there is no declaration and without a constitutional amendment, Congress cannot delegate their authority to anyone else, just like with the Federal Reserve Act.
Yes.
Doesn't give the Federal Reserve the authority to coin, the money coinage power that Congress has. And so we have this argument that so many are ignoring. I've only seen Senator Rand Paul mention it, The Nation magazine, The Atlantic, and National Review mention that Trump's bombing of Syria in April is unconstitutional. So I think that we should focus on that.
Well, I agree we need to make an issue about it, but again, we have a government that has gone totally off that constitutional reservation, and by so doing, they have rendered themselves illegal and illegitimate. And we're just going to have to sit back and wait for them to collapse. And it is coming. We can see it's coming.
Yeah. In the meantime, we should do things to support our local economy. You know.
I agree.
But let's stop them from trickling down. I find it most effective to work locally, and things like community currencies, time banks, barter networks, swap shops, cooperatives, and community gardens are the best way to go for that. But in the meantime, if you are going to take a stab at the beast and take the pressure off from on high, then we need to also let them know that down below here we do have each other to resort.
Well, we need to learn how to do that. Chris, sorry to do this. Got to let you go. Got to take a station break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're getting word now that the Russian oil giant Rosneft has issued a statement. Their computer servers are suffering a massive hacking attack. They announced it on Twitter. And the company has asked Russia's security services to look into the issue. So all of a sudden it's feeling like something big is about to happen, because apparently this malware, this ransomware that's running across Ukraine, Europe, Great Britain, it is very nasty. It's able to just get into your computer as if your security isn't there, which tells me this is another fine, wonderful product from those people at the National Security Agency. Now then, one of the callers into the show earlier was mentioning this $2.7 billion fine that Google was hit with from the European Union's antitrust regulator. And basically because Google was biasing the search engine to favor its own comparison shopping service in search results. And basically Google has now been ordered to apply the exact same methods to rivals as to itself. In other words, to make the search engine fair and unbalanced. And I'm sure Google is going out there saying, no, what's the point of being a global search engine if you can't control what people will see? Now, getting on back to Seth Rich. As you know, the story was it was a botched robbery, even though his wallet was not taken. His cell phone was not taken. His watch was not taken. And everyone is asking, where's his laptop? Where's his laptop? And apparently it's now come on out that the police have Seth Rich's laptop. Really? Why? If it's just a botched robbery, do you need to take the laptop, officers? Just think about that for a couple of minutes here. Now, as you know, there's a revolution in self-driving cars. I don't think it's really robust yet. It's got a long way to go. And again, I'm kind of like Jeremy Clarkson. I don't want a lot of gizmos between me in the road. If you remember Top Gear, and now, of course, they're doing Grand Tour. Jeremy Clarkson hates traction controls or cruise control. He wants to feel that he's driving the car. Exactly the same thing. I don't think I would be comfortable in a driverless car. If you're not going to drive, why have a car at all? Take the train. But apparently, security researchers have discovered that you can actually trick the LiDAR on a driverless car. It can be temporarily blinded, or you can fake an object that isn't actually there and force the car to swerve. So apparently, Ho-Cheol Shin, Do-Yoon Kim, Yi-Jun Kwon, and Youngdae Kim of the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology have demonstrated two kinds of attack against LiDAR, a spoofing attack and a saturation attack. And they're publishing their work in the International Association for Cryptologic Research preprint archive. And they're saying that, yes, the potential damage from an attack on the LiDAR of a self-driving car is very serious. It can cause accidents. New tool for the professional assassins out there to use. And another reason why I won't have a self-driving car. Now, over in Belgium, 50,000 protesters formed a 90-kilometer human chain to demand closure of aging reactors, which are showing cracks. They're past the end of their design lifespan. And they're trying to get the Tihang-2 because of the fissures in it, and they're very, very concerned, especially after what we saw happen at Chernobyl, what we saw happen at Fukushima, what we saw happening at 3 Mile Island. We're going to go ahead and take another phone call. Lenny in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, listen, I was listening to you like a few days ago, and I know you had your hopes up about Macron of France. Mm-hmm. But I want to go back to May 29th when Macron had Putin over to France for a visit. And Macron at that moment, at that time, rather, on that day, stated that chemical weapons were a red line in Syria for France. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was odd. I remember how Putin just turned and looked at him. Okay? And to me, that was the tip right then. And my whole thing said deception alert. You know, they elected this guy, but he's on the same page with the rest of the neocons. Wherever country they're in, they're selling out their people all over the world, okay, to be the minions of the bankers. They're all on the same page. And to me, you don't just come out of nowhere and make that statement. I'll never forget the look that Putin gave him, like, where did this come from?
Yeah,
okay,
I can imagine. I mean, Putin's a sharp guy, but, yeah, I can imagine that woke him up a little bit. Okay?
Yeah, and good, that's all I want to say. But the point is that the rest of them are just now, and watch Macron, he's going to flip. Okay, he came out and said the weapons were a red line. Now he's saying Assad can stay just to make it all look good. This is what I call deception alert. Now he's going to flip with the rest of them, and because it's all for, you know, what do you call it? The bigger Israel. Okay,
Greater Israel. Eretz Israel.
Exactly. It's all for that, and they're willing to sell the souls of every one of their countrymen just to get it.
Yes, unfortunately, people at that level, they are sociopathic. They have no empathy for the people whose lives they destroy. And, yeah, there is absolutely no question that part of the agenda in Syria is for Israel to grab the Golan Heights and say, this is now part of our country.
Right, and grab everything else they can grab.
True.
Okay, and the Kurds are just being used as cannon fodder. They're going to use them up until they can't use them anymore. Okay, and then after that, they'll fight, like I said before, like that proverbial fleet that you spoke on, they don't care who wins. Okay, they're just, you know, as whenever dog is left standing, that's the one they're going to leap to.
Yep.
So, okay, that's all I have to say.
All right, Lenny, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. is the driverless cars a hoax? Now, which state legislatures and the DMV are going to sign off for cars on the highway without a driver in it? I mean, if there's an accident, you can't get a statement from a driverless car. I mean,
well, you can get a statement from the owner of the car. That's the whole point of vehicle registration. There's a legal owner tied to that vehicle, even if something happens to it where the driver's not actually there. Now, they're not on the road all that much yet. It's still very much in the experimental stage, which is why this development about being able to spoof the LiDAR is of such concern. And I'm sure, as you know, the U.S. government is already using driverless trucks to bring munitions to the front line and so forth, and they use LiDAR. And so there's a possibility of an offensive or disruptive weapon being used against them based on this same principles.
I mean, if they pour another lane on the highway, maybe. But if you think they're going to be driving around, in traffic, I think it's a hoax. I mean, you have to take an eye test to get a driver's license. And there's just too much opportunity for vandalism. I mean, you see one of those things on the road. Who says a big truck ain't just going to push it off into the ditch? I'm just saying is I think it's a long ways down the road if there's a driverless car, and they'll have a special lane for it. I don't expect to see somebody driving by me without a driver in it anytime soon.
Well, you may be right, and that's one way of dealing with the issue, but again, they're pushing forward with the technology, and it may be a passing fad, like 4K TVs or the Internet of Things, which is already starting to fizzle and fade there as well. Again, I would absolutely not be comfortable with a self-driving car. I'm not even all that comfortable with traction control.
Right. Okay, Mike. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Dean in California. Aloha, Dean. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. This weekend I went to the Red Pill Expo. It was amazing. So many speakers, but one guy who I did get to talk to was Lord Christopher Monckton.
Mm-hmm.
And he has data that, I mean, I tried to listen to everything he said a few times. The math was way over my head.
Mm-hmm.
But he has data that he's going to submit when he gets back to the UK that will squash this climate thing for good. And he says he's going to get back to the UK and submit his information and hope for the best. But I figured you'd like to know.
Yeah, and I did get your email. I did get your email earlier, and Monckton's done a lot of really good work on all of this. And again, we have to be very careful because when the global warming people got into trouble, they rebranded as climate change, and you can't say climate isn't changing. The issue is what is controlling that climate change. Obviously, the sun, shape of the Earth's orbit, but they're still out there pushing this thing, and maybe they're still thinking they can get us to pay a carbon tax. Not going to happen. Or maybe they're just trying to build up buzz for Al Gore's new movie, The Inconvenient Sequel. And personally, I have absolutely no intention of ever seeing that because the first one was just nothing but garbage, nonstop, beginning to end.
Nice. Hey, I was wondering also, next year if I go, I was wondering, is there a way that I could get some, like RBN cards that I could hand out? Because I asked a lot of people if they'd heard of RBN, and they were like, no, I haven't heard of it. But I did mention you to someone on what really happened, and they said, oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what, when I let you go from this phone call, you talk to our control room guy, Mike, and give him your address, and I imagine that John Stedmiller would be happy to send you some cards. Or push come to shove, you can just print up a few yourself if you're going to go back to that. But, yeah, absolutely. Please help spread the word for RBN and whatreallyhappened.com and for Michael, whatever his name is.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Okay, the phone lines are open again. Boy, doesn't it sometimes just amaze you how much of our life experience involves scams, fraud, cheating, lies? It kind of makes you want to value those few honest people you see that much more. And again, nothing new about that. Remember, I think it was Diogenes walking around with his lantern, I seek an honest man. Okay. Now, there is a report up in Canada where medical prognosticators are saying that nearly half of all Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Now, that is well above the norm. Cancer, like autism, seems to be increasing. Gee, I wonder what it could be. And nobody, of course, is talking about the weed killer that is in their food supply. Now, California has just become the first state to list the main ingredient in Roundup as potentially cancerous. Starting on July 7, any product that has glyphosate in it will be required to have a label saying, caution, this product can cause cancer. Now, California's done a lot of really weird things lately, but this one they got absolutely correct. And the Canadian government is not really doing well by their own people to go along with this idea that, so what if you get cancer? We're all making money here and, you know, don't know what you're all complaining about. Over in Myanmar, Cambodia, and Thailand, there's been a massive drug interdiction effort which ended with the burning of $1 billion worth of illegal drugs. And they did it to commemorate the United Nations Day Against Drug Abuse and Trafficking. Basically, this comes in the wake of a record in the number of seizures of narcotics in those three countries. This is going to put a real dent in the CIA's coffee fund. And I'm wondering if these countries, Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, are now going to join the Philippines on the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list. Because the U.S. government doesn't like it when other governments are being nasty to the drug lords. Okay. Getting into the world of GMO, there's an interesting little story. Apparently, and this is being reported over at Natural Blaze, there is a strain of genetically engineered bacteria which has somehow found its way into animal feed in the European Union. And apparently the vector they've identified was this genetically modified vitamin. And the concern is that the bacteria is actually illegal. It's not approved for use for humans or animals. And so it's another reminder, this stuff can break into the wild. It can break into the wild, and you have to just absolutely be careful about it. Unfortunately, the companies that are doing this stuff, they're as driven as anybody else. We need more money, we need more profits, we need to impress our stockholders. And it's always slipped up. Who cares on that one? Reminds me of this cartoonist used to work, draw cartoons for Playboy magazine. And yes, I really did read the articles. Gahan Wilson. And he just had this taste of the bizarre. One of my all-time favorite cartoons is this pharmacist behind the counter at the pharmacy, and on the ground in front of the counter is just this blob of gel with two eyes. And the pharmacist is looking at the bottle and saying, whoa, we really did mess up your prescription, didn't we? I guess you had to be there. Story coming out of Activist Post. Organically grown, is it worth the price you pay? I'm not even going to get any further into the headline of the story. Of course it is. There are too many chemicals in corporate-produced food. Some are harmful and dangerous. Others are just there to make you eat more so they make more money. And a big part of my nearly 100-pound weight loss over the last 2 years is avoiding those chemicals. Everyone's always talking about America's obesity epidemic. Oh, they should go out and exercise more. They should do this more. No, it's the chemicals in the food that make you want to eat more, that make you crave carbohydrates, that interfere with the brain signal that says, I've had enough to eat. That's what's doing it. All for a fast buck. So anyway, getting on back to this article, and they're talking about how Whole Foods, even prior to its recent acquisition, had hit some scandals. They were supposed to be non-GMO, chemically-free foods, and unfortunately, there have been a couple of kerfuffles. And it may not even be Whole Foods' fault, because very often, again, microscopic amounts of certain things, you don't have to put it on the label. When the FDA mandates that you label a product, there's a percentage cutoff. Any ingredient below this percentage, you don't need to bother listing on the label. And yes, it's microscopic, but if it's something that builds up a continuous body burden, it can be a problem. Anyway, the article basically is talking about how, especially since the acquisition of Whole Foods by Amazon, there is now a surge in demand for organically grown natural food. There's a market out there for it. Remember, China's banned GMO, Russia's banning GMO. Russia actually wants to become the center for naturally grown organic food for the world, and there's going to be a marketplace for it. And I'm sure Monsanto is already out there saying, oh, well, we need to sanction Russia. They're not allowed to sell healthy food here because it's cutting into the profits of our unhealthy food. We'll be right back after these commercials. All right, let's try this one again here. And speaking of hackers, my web server is being hit with a DOS attack right now. So anyway, apparently there are a couple of different things going on right now. As we mentioned a little while ago, Russia's major oil company is saying their servers are under hack attack. What has this ransomware that has emerged in Ukraine, Kaspersky says it's something they've never seen before, and so they've given it the name X-Peter. And apparently so far, they've monitored attacks, mostly Ukraine and Russia, but it's also hit Poland, Italy, Great Britain, Germany, France, and the U.S. and several other countries. So this thing is all over the place. Meanwhile, Ukraine Central Bank is saying they've been hit by a cyber attack known as Petya A, more ransomware, and apparently it's hit their bank and everything it's connected to. So this is getting really ugly. Apparently, the Petya ransomware has hit the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Now, I'm presuming that in Russia, as is the norm here, that the actual computers controlling the reactor are air-gapped. But again, apparently, this new little nasty can infect over Wi-Fi ports. So you've got to be really, really careful on that one. Let's see, are there any else here? Getting on back to CNN. Apparently, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is out there championing the cause of making this Project Veritas video as viral as possible. And I'm absolutely in agreement. You've got to find that video. You've got to basically send it to everybody that you know. And put it on your social media. And CNN got caught lying big time. And we can't let them get away with that any longer. When you live in a nation where everybody in government and the media is lying to you, you have no idea what's going on. So we've got to do something about that. Now, remember that polio vaccine that paralyzed a bunch of kids in India? Well, the good news is they're about to give that exact same vaccine to 116 million African children. It's just out of control here. Okay, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, has resigned from the Church of England. Apparently, he was discovered he was helping to protect a pedophile bishop. And you're going to like this next one here. Apparently, over at the Vatican promoter of justice, Gian Piero Milano, did a study and basically found there was, in his words, unprecedented amounts of child porn discovered in the Vatican. And under Vatican law, he is not obligated to name the names of anybody, but apparently there was a lot of it. It's amazing here. Okay, when we come on back here, we're going to be looking for more updates on this ransomware hacking thing around the world. We all like to make fun of the snowflake liberals who are out there crying and screaming and carrying on. But I think there's a possible explanation there that we ought to take a look at. And there are historical precedents for what I think may be going on in dealing with this very erratic behavior. And I know I've blamed some of it on prescription antidepressants. I've blamed a lot of it on social conditioning that says this kind of behavior is acceptable. But I'm starting to think there may actually be something else going on. And when we come on back from the next commercials, I'm going to go into it. Meanwhile, again, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we'll be back after these few words. Calls in here before the end of the show. Apparently, they're making a lot of fun over Britain's aircraft carrier, which is still running on Windows XP, meaning somebody could win a battle with Control-Alt-Delete. And it's true, military technology is not always the latest and greatest. Sometimes they want to stick with something that's actually going to work, and I think that's really what's going on here. In my opinion, XP was the last really stable version of Windows to come out of Microsoft. I have two machines that are still running XP, including this Skype machine, and they don't give me the grief that Windows 7 does. And certainly not the grief Windows 10 did, while I briefly had that. But anyway, apparently there was another media meltdown and a tantrum at the press briefing today, which is exactly why the White House doesn't want those televised anymore. I think the corporate media is realizing they are losing this contest over who's actually running the country. And, of course, it was never the job of the corporate media to be running the country, despite what Mika Brzezinski said earlier this year, that it's their job to control what you're thinking. No, it never really was. They just decided it would be cool if they could, and they could make a lot more money controlling what you think for the ultra wealthy, as it were. Let's see. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog. Illegal immigration does hurt our economy. The Supreme Court was absolutely right on reactivating Donald Trump's travel ban. And, of course, the liberal Democrats, the open border people, they're having a total meltdown, including the liberal media. Oh, this is horrible. This is terrible. This is... And everybody's saying, just shut up, please. We've had enough of this thing. Let's see. Megyn Kelly ratings continue their downward spiral here. And more flashback from that Grenfell Tower. Apparently, now the residents are complaining of ill treatment. Oh, and by the way, there's been another fire over there as well. We're going to take some phone calls here. Mark in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. I heard some people mentioning Lindsey Williams, and I think I mentioned this to you a while back. Dr. Strange of Henry Kissinger back in the 70s after the gold window was closed, and we were trying to find a way to continue to profit. Well, I mean, not me, not you. I mean, the dark powers who didn't bother to tell us. Oh, by the way, part of the deal, according to Lindsey Williams, which makes sense, was we had to obstruct our domestic oil production in order to get other countries to agree to this. And, basically what Lindsey Williams said was, once we get to the point where the petrodollar collapses, we're no longer held up by that when people say, oh, well, screw the petrodollar, which from what I recall. I'd like to see that actual leaked email reportedly. Now, I say that because when I use the word like reportedly, meaning this is what I'm hearing, it makes sense, but I haven't vetted this out yet, is that one of Hillary's email says that the real reason why we invaded Libya, which is consistent with other reports I was hearing on the Internet, was that Libya was coming out with a gold-backed monetary system, like the founders intended us to have.
Yes.
And like I say, I have yet to see that email myself, but I'm going to say that, that is more than plausible in my way of looking at things.
Yeah, I've actually seen the memo. I've seen the memo on that where they're expressing concern about a gold-backed currency being a threat to U.S. economic hegemony in the region. So that definitely was real. Now, as far as the petrodollar deal is concerned, another reason for them to cap the wells at Gull Island is we couldn't burn it all up ourselves, and we did not want to sell to other countries because part of the petrodollar deal to get these Middle Eastern oil-producing nations to go along with it was we were going to say, we're not going to compete with you. We're going to make sure that all these people are coming to you for their oil.
Right. And that along with, that's what I hear, there's what I believe. What I've heard repeatedly is that there was technology for very high, thermodynamic efficiency engines, unlike the technology we have today. Now, we've had a lot of advances, but at the same time, you don't have anywhere near the thermodynamic efficiency that may well be available if technology were not, if you read the Constitution, it says to promote useful arts and sciences. That's why we have copyrights and patents, not to suppress technology. And so one thing I maintain is one thing we really need to press to people is that there's competitive capitalism and then there's monopolistic capitalism on the other pole, and between the two is oligarchy. And that's what we have is stifling of competition.
Yes.
And I maintain that stifling competition is not the system we're supposed to have. We have essentially everything the founders warned us against.
Yes.
So I do encourage people to be critical about everything because, I heard reports that Huma Abedin had released nude pictures of herself, and I looked all over finding them, dreading the prospect of, okay, so what if I find pictures of Huma Abedin naked with Hillary? So wait a minute, take the good with the bad.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you'll probably get a virus on your computer if you find that sort of thing out there. It's a complicated issue, the whole petrodollar deal. And you're right, it all came about because Richard Nixon ended gold convertibility of the Federal Reserve note, but he didn't really have a choice because the Federal Reserve is not, in fact, a part of the government, answers to no government authority. They don't even pay taxes other than the tax on the property their banks sit on, and they just printed up Federal Reserve notes and sent them to other countries and said, send us your manufactured goods and agricultural produce. And then when France said, we want to cash in these paper notes, Nixon looked in the vaults and said, there's nowhere near enough gold. And that's where that started. That, in turn, led to the petrodollar deal. Now we've had decades of the petrodollar deal. Now other nations are getting sick and tired of the petrodollar deal, and that is a big part of our current rush to war. The U.S. government is desperate to drag the earth back to the glory days of Bretton Woods, where everybody is enslaved to the U.S. Federal Reserve note, and nobody's allowed to use any alternative form of currency.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting was when I looked at the word plutocrat.
Yes.
Pluto is the counterpart to Hades, and the word Hades, you look in the Bible, the word Hades is translated as hell. So really, the term plutocrat literally breaks down to the reign of hell, and that's where they're taking us. And I understand, I respect that you're an atheist, or somehow you sound like spiritual, not religious, and I respect that because
Claire says that about me all the time.
I'm nauseated. But like I say, you do sound like you have a certain respect there. The problem is that people abuse religion to further their own political agendas, and that's where I warn people is, so like I called this guy, Al Cuffett, he used to be with the Joint Chiefs of Staff or something. And he was rabidly King James only. That's why I came up with a thing about calling him a mute donkey, 2 Peter 2:16, King James Version. Yes, that translates to dumbass in the King James. But
anyway, Mark, I hate to cut you off, but we got a bunch of callers waiting on the line. We're running out of time on the show.
Oh, I got you. God bless.
All right, thank you very much. Here, we're going to switch over to Fred in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I want to get to the point, and I want your reaction, and I won't say that much, but I want to get your reaction to why these things are happening. First of all, I've noticed that there's this militarization of police, and everyone has noticed that. And then when that got to be, like, on Time Magazine and the biggest issue, then all of a sudden we were distracted by some terrorist attacks. I noticed something got in the way of discussing the militarization of police. Also, you've had the homicide rates in American cities going up 12, 15, 35, even 75% in some of these unfortunate cities.
Yeah, like Detroit.
And I think there is a slow motion collapse going as far as services are concerned, because I believe there is people not having a stake in the system.
That's a very cogent observation here. It does feel like literally the fabric of our society is starting to become frayed and wear thin. Claire and I were just commenting the other day, when we first moved here, a long time ago, everyone they drove slow, they're polite, everybody's courteous. Today we're seeing so much reckless driving, and we know it's road rage, and it manifests in the cars, because these days your car is pretty much the only place where you feel like you are in control. Everything else has been taken away from you. Everything's being watched, everything's being monitored, and we've seen the local population just get angrier and angrier, and we're being driven that way by the economic news. And right now, of course, there's a factor in that everybody who lives here, especially on Oahu, all of the islands, but especially here on Oahu, that are paying attention to this rush to war with Russia, they understand if that actually happens, this island is probably going to be attacked.
Okay, and you're right. Getting back to the economic situation, obviously you don't have this kind of an inflation rate on something like a bag of white flour, but on the good food, on the organic food, on good water, there's a high inflation rate. There's a high inflation rate on rent, on services, which is an economic, it's not primary, it's not secondary, it's services. You know what I'm saying? The economic category, which would include medical, energy and utilities, and then communication, a good, not cheap communication, but broadband, and that there's a high inflation rate, and on taxes. And the government is saying we have a low inflation rate, but when you look at the fees and the taxes and the rents, it's much higher than 3%.
Well, when the government is calculating the rate of inflation, they're rigging the calculations the same way they do the jobless numbers. For the very first thing, food and fuel are not included in the government's inflation calculation, and that's where inflation shows up first, and we're certainly seeing it here, and it is going to get a lot worse. Especially if the Federal Reserve starts quantitative tightening, we're going to see prices go right through the roof. They have been working very, very hard to conceal the inflationary pressures coming out of the Federal Reserve's creation of trillions of dollars to shower all over Wall Street. And now they're trying to figure out a way they can pull back from it, and I don't think they can.
It seems to go into services first rather than, a bag of rice or something like that. I mean, you can't. What I'm saying is people need to have a glimmer of hope. They need that feeling that the good life is possible, and they're not going to be content with being pushed into poverty. And I believe that's why you have this misbehavior, and that's why you have the frustration, the crime rates. What do you think?
Well, I think you're very close to it. I think what's going on is people are walking around this country right now. They've lost all hope that there's going to be a better future. Everybody looking forward, all they're seeing is more debt, more taxes, more war, more death, It's very, very
and bad
hard.
leadership.
And bad leadership, especially more bad leadership.
I got to go.
Okay, you got to go. Thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to James on the Big Island. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was calling for Michael.
Yes.
And I'd like to talk to you. I really don't want to talk on the air.
Oh, okay. Well, then we're going to let you go off the air here. And Mike.
I'd like to put me on to your secretary. I'll give her or him my phone number.
Okay, Mike in the control room will take care of that, and we're going to talk with Dan in Hawaii. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you. I enjoy the show. I listen every day.
Thank you.
I had a question for you. The question is, do you have any information on the effects of Fukushima in the waters around the Hawaiian archipelago, specifically, if possible, the Big Island?
Well, no, I do not, because my radiation gear it will not work in water, and it will not detect alpha radiation. So I've been doing airborne monitoring, and, of course, we did get a huge spike after the accident happened. It's been low for a while. Now it is very slowly starting to trend up. Mostly because that Pacific gyre current carried the radiation north of us here in Hawaii to the west coast of the United States, and now the back circulation is bringing it in through here. But I would imagine that you might be able to find a radiation meter and just check it for yourself, because obviously I'm on Oahu, so anything I do here may or may not apply to the Big Island.
Okay, one more question quickly. Yeah. What do you think about the, you know where Hilo is?
We have family there.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, what do you think about Hilo in terms of being a target?
I don't see Hilo being a target for what, attack?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, I don't see Hilo being a target. The only thing that's militarily important on the Big Island is there is a training ground that's in that hollow between Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea.
Pahakaloa.
What?
That's Pahakaloa.
Yeah, yes, you're right. That's really the only thing they have on the Big Island. Pretty much all the military is concentrated up here. I know they've got radar stations on most of the islands. But the majority of the assets are right here on Oahu, which is why we're very nervous about this rush to war.
Yeah, me too. Okay, thank you very much, Michael.
All right, thank you. And we're going to start with Peter in Dallas, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. From my point of view, I'm with you that perhaps the greatest service anyone can do is to point out the harms of fractional reserve banking. And I think that the discussion needs to start to include alternatives, because if the whole thing comes down, we need to be educated. We need to have to go to a different system. So I would just like to make one observation concerning money. What is money? If I owe you $50 and I give you my bike, you may not want the bike. But if I give you a gift card to Home Depot, you may very well take that. And the reason why you would take that is not because they have any gold in their vault, but because they have chainsaws and drywall and lumber. So I think a currency has value based on what that economy produces, and that's the real value of a currency. What can you buy with it? What does that economy produce? So
well, you've hit the nail on the head. Okay, the reason why more and more countries are turning away from the U.S. Federal Reserve note, if you're trading for the yuan, you can take the yuan to China and get manufactured goods. If you're taking the ruble, you can go to Russia and get safe, healthy food to eat. If you take a Federal Reserve note and you bring it to the United States, about all that you can buy for it anymore are weapons, and they don't work very well. So, I mean, you're exactly right. Ultimately, the currency is an expression of what the country produces. Okay, we got to take a break for commercial. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And And aloha. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take one more phone call, then I got a couple of updates on some important stories. Mateus in Canada, aloha. What is on your mind today?
Aloha, snack bar. I'm going to get into the habit of calling in later because I have such unrelated topics. You mentioned a while ago that AI or robots could possibly wipe us out with some malfunction, and I wanted to add to that they could also wipe us out without any malfunction. They could have the logic that it would be like a compassionate killing or almost an assisted suicide, because if the robots don't have an appreciation for the higher values of humanity, like the more subtle things such as creative expression and self-improvement through making mistakes and learning from them and spirituality, if they just saw it in a face value, they might think, well, you know what, there's so much misery, let's save them from all the future generations of misery and just take us out that way. Kind of a funny idea.
Well, it is a funny idea. Anyway, I'm going to let you go because I got a couple of things I need to hit before the end of the show, so thank you very much for the phone call. We are hearing that this virus is really, it's going global, and it's infecting companies all over. I'm looking at this thing here. Apparently, the company that hosts the email account which the ransomware asks you to contact has closed the account, meaning if you get hit with this ransomware, there's no way to get your files back. Wow, I mean, somebody's using this as a weapon. Now, CNN is still out there pushing the story about the Russia connection. The Washington Post has already gone on the attack against O'Keefe, trying to discredit him and say, this is ridiculous. How dare he do this to CNN? We're above the, we're exalted people. You don't expose us as liars. Well, it's too late. The cat is out of the bag. Not like it's a big shock. We know the corporate media's job is to lie to us, to sell us wars, to sell us the next president, to sell us the next car, to sell us the next policy, the next tax. That's their job. Mika Brzezinski said it on the air. The job of the corporate media is to control what you're thinking. So, meanwhile, looking at the Fox News feed, they're still pushing this thing. If Syria dares do a chemical attack again, we will attack. They're going to go with this. They're going to go with this. And nobody's believing it. All over Twitter, all over the news. Remember what I said about Breitbart. Normally the Breitbart readers are fair and balanced and civil. And over 90% of the comments on that story basically were saying, this is clearly a lie. And they're still going to go with it. Apparently the attitude is, it's the official position, it doesn't matter if it's the truth, it's the official position, and we are going to act on the official position, and to heck with truth and veracity. It's got no place today. And I got to tell you, I am seriously disappointed in Donald Trump over this. After he ran last year on pulling back from all these foreign interventions, and here we are going into overdrive into Syria, potentially Russia. All right, that's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, please share what you find on the website and at the radio show with everyone that you know. Especially, get on out there. CNN got caught lying. There's nothing to the Russia story. They admit it's a hoax. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.